Right. Sorry about that, domestic bliss. Right. Okay, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome. I'm David Jeeps, and I'm chairing today's meeting. Please be aware that members of the public are invited to view this meeting online, and the meeting is recorded, I think actually being live streamed. Forum members are requested to keep their microphones on mute and to only turn these on when they are called to speak. If you have any questions or comments to make on the reports, please use the chat function and simply write RTS, request to speak, with your name. Please access the chat function from the horizontal menu bar. Use a right click to bring it up, but not the icon on the left-hand side. Can I please ask everyone taking part today to confirm they're present? And I think I'll do this in time-honoured fashion by doing a register. I think it's fairly alphabetical. So do we have Ian Hunkin? Jackie Collins?
Present.
David Jeeps is here. Sherdal? Joe Cooper?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Joe. Kate Keller? Sonia Nickerson? Nathan Waits? Niz, I can see Niz. Welcome, Niz. Steve Labatz?
Yes, sir.
Keep an eye on him in the corner. Sharon Burt? Sharon's here, I know. So, and a very warm welcome to Sharon joining the forum from the Solent Academies Trust. Sam Galloway, who's observing. I can see Sam next to Sharon. Councillor Horton.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Udi. Present.
Hello.
Hi. Councillor Smythe. Present.
Chair. I don't think Kate Keller is working in Portsmouth anymore either.
Okay, thank you. I think they're going to do an update on membership in a second. Councillor Stagg. Councillor Norton.
Yes, present, Chair.
And Simon Barrable.
Yeah, I'm here.
And Cara Jewell. Right, is there anyone online who's in the meeting who I didn't call out? Councillor Horton's with us, that's brilliant.
Yeah, Sean Preston.
If you could just type in the chat function and we'll see. Okay, right. So, Alison Egerton, I think you're going to do the apologies for absence.
Yes.
Oh, hang on. We've got Sean Preston. Sean?
Yeah, I'm here. Sean Preston, Hamwick Education Trust.
Hamwick.
That's right.
Brilliant. And Jason, you've got your hand up.
Present. You didn't call me, Chair.
Apologies. Jason as well. Yeah, thank you. Right, have I got everyone else? Okay, right. Alison, are you online? Alison Egerton?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Right.
Hello, everybody. Sorry.
Apologies, please, Alison.
Yeah, I believe we've only received one apology, and that is from Cara Jewell, who's our early years representative.
And then declarations of interest. So I give you now an opportunity to declare any interest in any items on today's agenda. Okay. And then Alison, if you can update us, reference membership changes. We've already said welcome to Sharon, who's the Executive Head of Solent Academy Trust.
Yes, so Sharon's our new member. She's joined as our Special School Academy representative following the retirement of Alison Bean at the end of the summer term 2020. So thank you very much, Sharon, and welcome to the forum. There are a number of tenures which are due to expire after this meeting. These are Ian Hunkin, who's our Maintained Special School representative, Kate Keller, who's a Primary Academy representative, Sonia Nickerson, again a Primary Academy representative, and Simon Barabel, who's our 16 to 19 representative. I have written to all of those 4 members asking if they would be happy to stand again once I've received their responses, and I have received some. I will be writing to the appropriate sectors accordingly. Sonia Nickerson has confirmed that she is going to stand down, and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank her for her input to the forum over recent years. Over the past few meetings, Ian Hunkin has been represented occasionally by Matthew McLaughlin-Parker. He is the interim head at the Harbour School, and they have agreed that Matthew will take over as Maintained Special School representative officially from the next meeting. And I would like to thank Ian for his input again to the forum over the recent years. Obviously, once the Harbour School converts to an academy status, Matthew's tender will cease, and the number of Special School Academy representatives will need to be reviewed as part of the 2021 Constitution. There are now 2 vacancies within the Secondary Academy representatives. After the last meeting, I didn't have anybody come back to me. I'm going to be contacting all the Secondary Academy representatives to see whether there's anybody who would like to volunteer. And those colleagues that work in the academy sector, if you could chivvy people along, that would be really helpful. And I think that's all on the membership for the moment.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we absolutely endorse everything you said about the work that Sonia and others have put in. Very much appreciated. And just I've seen on the chat here that we've got Matthew present, as you said, for Ian. Right, hopefully you've either got your packs or you have it digitally. But what we're going to do next is go through the minutes of the previous meeting to agree that they're true and accurate on 8th of July. But first of all, are there any comments that anyone would like to make? We'll walk through the different pages. So we'll start off on page 5 of your packs. Page 6. Page 8. Page 9 and page 10. I will pause briefly. And very shortly, I'm going to be looking for a proposer and a seconder for those minutes. There's someone who was at that meeting to propose and second. So if there are no comments on those minutes and people are happy, they're an accurate reflection of the meeting, could I now have a proposer, please? If you just want to type in the chat, anyone? Don't be shy. Thank you, Cher. And someone to second? Don't be shy, just anyone? Jackie, you seconding? Could I see you seconding there? Oh, that's a thumbs up from Jackie Collins. Thank you, Jackie. Okay, and the way the voting's going to work here is it's kind of a default. So what I'm going to read a statement out, and if you would like to object, you should object in the comments, as it were. So the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I will now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. and this is your chance now. Does anyone object to the recommendations to adopt these as a true and accurate reflection of the last meeting? And I shall pause. Okay, so the minutes of the previous meeting have therefore been approved as published. In terms of matters arising from the minutes, there were none. So therefore, we're going to move straight on to item 5, the DSG Q1 outturn report. And I think, Alison, you're going to lead on that one?
I am, yes. Okay, so this is the dedicated schools grant Q1 report and the revised budget for 2021. The report sets out the dedicated schools grant forecast position for the 2021 financial year as at the 30th of June 2020 and advises of proposed revisions to the 2021 budget. I'll deal with the Q1 forecast first. The dedicated schools grant forecast is where we would expect it to be at the end of the first quarter. As at the end of June, we are still partway through the summer term and did not have the actual pupil data to forecast a year-end position on a number of budget headings. Therefore, the majority of the pupil-related budgets are forecast to be as on budget. The exceptions to this are the Growth Fund. This is for forecasting a planned underspend of 284,000 and a consultation proposing to carry forward the underspend to 21-22 is due to go to schools shortly. The additional one is the Element 3 top-up funding for alternative provision. The forecast overspend is 56,000 and the reasons are detailed in the report. The net position provides a forecast carry forward of 3.2 million as at the end of June 2020, which Schools Forum are requested to note. I'm going to pause and ask if there are any questions on the forecast position before going on to the revised budget.
Just a clarification, Alison, the 56,000 on the high needs block overspend, given that schools were closed during the lockdown period, could you just explain to members how that came again? How that?
Oh, sorry. So the 56,000, it relates to the Harbour School. Over the summer term, the authority commissioned an additional 3 places at Harbour School, and therefore the top-up funding was for those 3 places. We've assumed that those additional places will continue for the whole of the financial year, but obviously things may change as we go into the new academic year. In addition, there's the pupils that are near to school that authority has agreed to fund those pupils because it was funding that Harbour would have lost with those pupils not going in due to not being able to locate where they would have come from, if that makes sense. And again, that should just be for the one term.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that first part of Alison's report before we look at the budget revision section? Okay, Alison, do you want to take us through the budget revision, please?
Okay, so since setting the budget in February 2020, there have been a number of changes that have impacted on the 2021 budget. They're set out in detail in section 4, but they are basically a clarification of the number of changes to the high needs block relating to special schools and post-16 place funding, and also the annual July dedicated school grant adjustments relating to the high needs and early years block funding. The revised budget is set out in Appendix 1 and includes the proposed adjustments to both the income and expenditure budgets, which requires a proposed use of 376,300 of the carry forward to support the high needs changes. The report requests Schools Forum to endorse the proposed budget changes, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Just one from me, just to understand a bit more about the recoupment for the post-16 high needs. Could you just I've not seen that one before, so can you just explain that one to us, please?
Yes. So this is funding within the high needs block. We get funding for high needs places for special schools, independent specialist providers. We get the funding come in, and then it's removed and paid directly from the DFE. Remove that funding and pay it directly to those settings on our behalf. We had for the last 3 years an independent setting that was within our high needs block, which we were being told we were the home authority for. The actual provider isn't based in Portsmouth. It had an office in Portsmouth, but not any settings. So for the last 3 years, we've been arguing that with the DFE. They have now confirmed that that setting has now been moved from Portsmouth. So that adjustment to our funding, they've taken that funding away from us. But having said that, we are now not paying that funding to that provider. So it's a nil impact. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the revised budget that Alison's just presented to us? Sean Preston.
Yes, thank you for that report. Just a point of clarification, if possible, just to confirm sort of the additional environment effectively for the additional high needs spend, just to confirm that's relating pretty much predominantly due to additional places being required and no fundamental changes to anything within it, purely a place basis, if that's okay, please.
Yeah, it's to do with additional places and the associated element 3 costs.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, observations, points of clarification? Shortly, I'll be asking for the forum to a proposer to approve those recommendations as outlined in paragraph 2.1, and also a seconder. So get ready. But before we go to proposers or seconders for the endorsement, any final observations or questions from folk? Okay, so we have noted the forecast year-end budget position for the DSG as at the 30th of June 2020, together with the associated explanations contained within this report, and supplemented with Alison's commentary. And therefore, I would like to endorse the revisions to the 2021 budget as set out in the appendix in section 4. Do I have a proposer for the approval of the recommendations for paragraph 2.1? Don't be shy. Simon, you're looking like you're going to propose. Oh, Sean, thank you. And a seconder. Simon, was that more of a seconder type face you're making? Oh, Jason, thank you. And Cher, thank you. That's well seconded. And as before, the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I will now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objections to this recommendation? So if you disagree, now is your time to speak. Okay, so that's carried unanimously by the looks of things. Right, we're going to move on now. I think, Angela, you're going to take us through the school funding arrangements for 2021 into 2022. And again, you will be asking us to consider endorsing a number of proposals. Angela, are you there?
I am, David, thank you. So the recommendations to Schools Forum is to note the changes to school revenue funding arrangements for 2021-22 set out in the report. And it's also asking for endorsement to the proposals for implementing the local funding formula arrangements as set out in the report, in particular implementing the national funding formula rates for all schools, which is set out in Appendix 1 and compares it to 2021 rates that we've currently used. implementing a minimum funding guarantee of at least 0.5% and up to 2% subject to affordability for 21-22 as set out in the paragraphs 5.16, and also looking at the 5.7 to manage our affordability of, oh sorry, I think I've got that wrong. So the minimum funding guarantee is in 5.17, I think, and 5.16 is about the area cost adjustment. Oh, sorry, they're both 5.17. And finally, endorsing the disapplication request as set out in section 6, which we've had in previous years for the school. So in terms of the report, the first part is displaying how the funding has been allocated to Portsmouth for it to then be redistributed, and table 1 shows the indicative allocations which were released in July. The report then goes on to detail what the implications are for mainstream schools, whilst we're still waiting to hear more about the high needs block, and which we're hoping will be in November, and we don't have a date yet for the early years DSG. And the things that we do know, there's technical changes that are happening, which is inclusion of the teachers' pay grant and the teachers' pension employees contribution grants and supplementary grants into the school core funding, which is in section 5.6. And apologies, we hadn't updated that reference. And the other technical change is updating the income deprivation affecting indices. That's changing to different bands. And it's also utilising the 2019 data set. We had some information released last week, which will help us to work out what the implications might be for Portsmouth with those changes, and we're hoping that we will have looked through that by the October half term. The report goes on to say what the changes are for the national funding formulas, rates, and also, as already said, the report asks for endorsements about how we will manage the allocations and make sure that they're affordable, because we won't actually know our initial funding allocation until mid to late December, and that'll be too late to come back to Schools Forum to meet our deadlines. So the proposals to ensure that it is affordable are not to apply the area cost adjustment, which is 1.42% for Portsmouth, to the national funding formula factor values. And then the second thing would be to look at the level of the minimum funding guarantee being lower than 2%, but not less than 0.5%. We're not proposing to transfer any money between the different blocks of DSG, although that is still available to local authorities as per the guidance. This section also looks at the proposal to apply for the disapplication request for Arc Charter Academy, and the reasons for that disapplication request are in the paper. Appendix 1 compares the factor values used in Portsmouth, as already said, for this year compared to 21-22. So you can see what the changes are. The policy document stated that there was no need to consult with schools regarding the 2021-22 mainstream funding formula if authorities were already using national funding formula, which Portsmouth is. But however, to keep schools up to date, we've included a briefing in the consultation regarding the growth fund balances, and that's in our any other business for any comments that you have before we send it to all schools for information. and that was sent out on Friday. In terms of the high needs funding, the indicative funding that we had from the Department for Education provided Portsmouth with an increase in funding of 12.7% when compared to 2021, and that also includes the pay and pensions grants and the deprivation index changes. But our actual funding again won't be known until December. And we're actually waiting for further guidance on how that funding is actually to be passed to schools. And a bit more information again is in the report. And then finally, the Central Schools Services block has been released, and that's increased by 55,000 as set out in 8.2. The report also goes on just to give an update about the SEND strategy. And finally, it also gives an update on where we are in terms of looking at mainstream EHCP banding, which I know is the idea has come to Schools Forum previously, and the details are in section 12. And it would mean an increase to the cost of DSG by 20,500 based on July 2020 information. But the final banding values would be set in January 2021 after our high needs DSG allocations are actually known. So I don't know whether anybody's got any questions about the report.
Yeah, we've got first of all Niz and then on to Jason, I think. Niz.
Is it at the top on your screen? Or space bar sometimes takes mute off. Oh, it's back on again.
You had it then, Niz. Try again. You're doing there.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I think. Can you hear me? I think my internet might not be very good.
I can hear you.
Okay. So my question is just around the differing impact, because this report is presented for a financial start of the year in terms of maintained schools, which is the April start of the year. The teacher pay grant and the teacher pension grant, to my knowledge, are only funded until April for all schools. So how are academies going to be funded for the loss of the teacher pay grant and the teacher pension grant between that period from April through to August through this proposal?
Alison, do you want to reply?
Yes, I can. Just to confirm, Niz, the DfE have actually confirmed that academy schools will get their teachers' pay grant until August 21. So it ties in with your financial year, where maintained schools will tie in with their financial year.
So is that both teacher pay grant and the teacher pension grant as well?
That's what my understanding is, yes.
Oh, that's great news. Thank you for that, Alison.
That's okay.
That is good news, yeah. It's Jason and then Cher. Jason?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Angela. My question really revolves around the ADACI banding. I know, and I'm pleased to see that 5.13, the DfE are proposing looking at that in future. However, considering as furlough schemes start to unwind and deprivation is likely to increase, that we're seeing across nationally, is there any provision that we can review these bandings prior to the DfE stepping in a year or two's time?
Alison, have you heard anything?
So, yeah. The ADACI banding is based on the Office of National Statistics data, and it's normally revised every 5 years. I've not heard anything from the DfE with regards to any changes or consideration of changes outside of that. We do tend to have a session around about November time with other South East area finance groups, and I can raise it at those sessions with the DfE to see if anything's been considered.
Thank you.
And I think it's probably, it is just worth noting that actually our pupil information was better last year. in 2019 it was better than the 2018, which is why we were able to increase the lump sum for all schools, because of the different ways the DFE used the data, and it was because the deprivation in 2019 was actually better than what it was in 2018, and they'll be using the 2019 data for allocation.
Okay. Better as in less deprived.
Yes,
we mean,
it was in 2019. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Moving on to share, a point of clarification around 4.3.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I was just interested in the comment about the government intending to put forward plans for a hard NFF, and whether that's likely to have any impact on us. I understood that we use the NFF that they currently produce. Does it just mean, will it have any impact on us, or?
No, it won't have any impact on us because we've already moved, so it only affects the local authorities and schools that haven't moved there.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cher. Moving on, Alison, you've got yourself down. Do you want to interject here, or was that for a previous one?
No, that was in response to a previous query.
Okay, then on to Sean Preston, please.
Thank you again for the report. My question is regarding the affordability and the potential use of the underspend on the growth funding. And apologies if this is going to be covered under AOB, but it might be worth considering if an underspend in the growth funding is carried forward into 21-22, that be utilised in the event of any affordability issues before we start adjusting any formula factors. But like I say, if that's covered under AOB, apologies. I just thought it's worth raising.
I think the only thing is that the underspend on the growth funding is a one-off issue, whereas this would be a recurring issue. So therefore, we would have to adjust something that would be recurring each year for the schools in order to make sure it was all affordable. Whereas, say, the growth funding is any underspend is sort of a one-off benefit. And there is quite a lot of unknowns, I suppose, really about what the calls might be on the growth funding. So I think the growth funding wouldn't be our preference to go there. But,
okay, I do understand where you're coming from, but I think that the affordability, I would argue, is probably an annual decision because it fluctuates depending on the pupil data each year. I totally agree with you that it would have to be considered in the long term, but I think if there is money spare, it would be remiss of us to go against the full national funding formula, even though we may have to if there is surplus funds elsewhere we could utilise first. I think it's worth a discussion in the future, subject to affordability, of course.
Could I just add something?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, please do, yeah.
It's Alison.
Oh, Alison, you're breaking up.
With the growth funding we get from, I'm sorry, is that any better?
Yes, you're better now, yeah.
Okay, so with regards from the growth funding we get from central government, that is, we won't know that until late December. The growth fund that we currently have and the proposal to carry forward funding is to ensure that the growth fund is affordable in the future for our current commitments. So if there is additional funding, and I'll be honest, when I did the estimates for the growth funding we get from central government, I think they're probably slightly on the low side. I think if there's any additional funding that comes through naturally from growth from central government, then that will become part of the schools block that would get distributed. But the key thing is to make sure that the growth fund we have currently got and we've signed up to with the schools in the city is maintained, which is why we're requesting to carry that forward on an annual basis.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
That's okay.
Thank you, Sean. I think we have a question from Cher around 6.2 and 3.
Yes, thank you. It's probably just my lack of understanding, but it's about the ARC Charter Academy. The paragraph 6.2 seems to be suggesting the MFG has been continuing to grow. So is the arrangement it's talking about in paragraph 6.3 a new arrangement that we're approving for the first time, which means it won't continue to grow, or is that what's happening here? Or I don't understand why it would be continuing to grow if you've got that arrangement. That's what I'm confused about.
Okay, do you want me to answer this? It's Alison here again.
Yeah,
sorry.
It comes up regularly, this one. So yeah.
It does. Yeah, no, that's okay. It's okay. So Charter Academy have historically received a lot of MFG because of their pupil situation from when we went to the new formula funding. As the school was growing, obviously that MFG was then being paid on a per pupil basis and was just increasing. To enable us to stop the MFG growing with the pupils, we've agreed that we will cap the pupils at the 600, which is the number of pupils that were in the school at the time that we came to this arrangement. So the MFG that the school will get, they will still continue to get MFG, but it will only be on those 600 pupils. Any additional pupils over and above, well, they will not receive MFG for, which is why I'll have to ask for the disapplication request.
So just to clarify that it is what I thought, which means that it was growing without this arrangement, but now it won't continue growing.
It will only grow in line with those on those 600 pupils. So if our MFG across the city is growing by, say, 2%, they will get 2% on those 600 pupils. What they won't get is then 2% on the other 100 and something pupils that they have additional.
Oh, I see. So the growth won't be to do with them deserving more. It'll just be the natural growth that everybody gets.
That's
on
right.
The basis
Yeah.
of the 600. Right. I understand. Yeah. Thank you.
Fine. And it's probably worth saying is that we have to do disapplication request every year.
Right. So, I'll try and remember.
No, so it's fine. But we have to do it for it. It doesn't stand for however long it needs to apply for. We have to do the application every year to Secretary of State, and then it's granted up.
Can I make a suggestion that perhaps next year when you do it, you could say for the third year we are, so that it doesn't sound like a new thing. Yes. That I was just confused by the first paragraph, which sounded as if it was still growing, and this was the first time we were doing it, whereas it sounds like it isn't.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it's a historic peccadillo which has sort of been resolved, but yeah, it's a good point. Probably the wording for next year's report should, yeah, so I think that's a good point there, Chair. Thank you. Any more questions, clarifications, observations? My only observation is around the Adaki. We know previously when they were rebanded, it did cause some financial stress across schools in the city. So just keep a very careful eye out for schools, and if we can know quite early on where we are at a school level, because those IDACI bans can swing things quite wildly for individual schools. So. And that with the pension stuff going into the core funding, whilst it feels like there's more money in the system, I think we all know that the reality may well be different, but one to watch. Okay, right. If there's no other questions, then very shortly I'm going to ask someone to be a proposer and a seconder for paragraph 2.1. where we're both noting the Department for Education's proposed changes to revenue funding arrangements, but also endorsing those 4 bullet points around implementing the NFF, implementing an MFG of at least 0.5% up to 2% subject to affordability, adopting the method of managing affordability as set out in paragraph 5.17, and also implementing the disapplication request for Charter Academy as laid out in section 6. So, do I have a proposer for the approval? Who's looking proposer like? Sean again. Thank you, Sean. And do I have a seconder? Oh, well done, Niz. Very good. Very good. So Niz seconds, and therefore the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I will now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objections to this recommendation? Pause. Okay, therefore it is endorsed and carried. Thank you all. Right, we move on now to any other business. And I'm to ask, is there any other business? And I am to go through the list of members present, asking each to unmute and to yes or no if you have any other business. So we have got, let me get my register again. Where are we? Where are we? So Jackie Collins, do you have any other business?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Joe Cooper? I think they have gone. Niz?
No, thank you.
Steve Lebetz?
No, thanks, David.
Okay. Sharon Burt?
No, thank you.
Councillor Horton?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Udi?
No, thank you.
Councillor Smythe?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I would, partly because the public might be listening and they must long to know this, and partly because I don't think I've missed anything. I've got the papers up on my other machine. I've been looking at it. If you read the papers and things, you understand that the schools have had a lot of costs to do with COVID. And I wondered whether all this was included in all these generic annual figures, or whether there were special grants that schools were able to apply to offset the costs of managing social distancing and rejigging their schools and extra cleaning and things.
Alison will possibly give us a bit more. I know from a school perspective, I'm not too sure about post-16, but certainly for school perspective, grants were available, and depending on the size of the school, you could apply. I think a large school could get up to about £75,000. And I understand, talking yesterday to my business manager, another window either has opened or is about to open, reference the extraordinary costs associated with COVID. That's my understanding. Alison, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that one.
I think you've pretty much summed it up, David. I know there was people applied for grants in the summer term, and I understand there is potentially a grant, another opportunity coming up, but I've not seen anything confirming that from the DfE as yet.
I mean, my worry is that schools that are already suffering tight budgets and lack of money for teachers, having to dismiss teaching assistants in some cases, will have to do more of that because of the additional costs of coping with the COVID pandemic. Is that the case or not? Or did everybody get some of these grants and they're all quite happy?
I don't know that, you know, this forum's in a position to sort of answer that question. I don't know we've got that data to hand, but I think that the sentiment that, you know, schools have incurred costs is certainly true. Equally, I think, as I've mentioned, there was quite significant funds available for a large secondary school. Off the top of my head, it was £75,000, which is not insignificant. In that sense, the costs were met. But yeah, it's further pressure. I think all employers, all organisations across the country, if not the world, are feeling the pinch. And I think we're all with you on that one. We do understand that COVID has impacted us all in multifarious ways.
Thank you, David. I can pursue this separately if I need, but that's a good summary. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norton, AOB.
Yeah, just a quick thank you from on behalf of the Conservative group for all that you're doing to get young people back into school. We appreciate it's a difficult time, but no doubt school is the best place for these young people. So thank you for all your additional efforts during these challenging times.
No, that's very much appreciated. Thank you for that commentary. Simon. Simon with us?
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add.
Cara knows here. Jason?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, and I think, did we have, was it Ian was here? And
Matthew in place of Ian, David.
Sorry, Matthew, sorry.
No, nothing to raise, thank you.
And Sean, any AOB?
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Right, have I missed anyone? I've been trying to desperately keep up with my notes. Have I missed anyone?
Share.
Yes.
Share. Sorry.
And Vin.
Sorry, Share.
So Share hasn't got any.
Thank you, Share. Thank you. I do apologise for missing you out. Right.
I'm
right.
here as well, David. Lynn.
Oh, Lynn. Hello, Lynn. Sorry, I didn't have you noted down. Welcome, Lynn. And do you have any other business?
No, I don't. I think I would have asked the same question that Judith did. So thank you for that information.
Lovely. No, lovely to see you. Right, good stuff. So the final bit from myself is feedback on the draft briefing and consultation to be circulated to schools. Prior to circulation to all schools, Alison has asked for feedback on the draft document circulated last Friday, and in particular, is the message clear and understandable? Does it provide schools with enough information to be able to comment? And if not, what further information would help? Now, I know it's probably been quite a frenetic week in schools. Certainly, we've been very busy, so I'm not sure if anyone's got huge amounts of feedback, but if you do, now is your chance to give instant feedback to Alison. Right. Well, if I could ask you, when things are a little less frenetic, if you could have a look at that email, I'm sure Alison would very much appreciate some comments and feedback, please. And just to note that there is a proposal that, given the timings outlined in today's meeting, that we actually cancel our meeting in October and only have our meeting, which our next meeting, therefore, will be on the 2nd of December. That's right, isn't it, Alison?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so if everyone's okay with that, we're proposing to cancel the October meeting, and our next time we will meet will be on the 2nd of December. Who knows what the world will look like by then, one wonders. So hopefully that's fine. Can I just add and finish the meeting by thanking everyone for your participation. Those of you who are working on the front line in particular, thank you for all you're doing. And those of you who are helping business in the background, the school business, again, huge thanks to you all. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you all on the 2nd of December. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Peter. You can now stop the live stream.